Imagine spending billions of dollars on a building that only hosts around 10 football games a year. On paper, it sounds like one of the worst investments imaginable. Yet NFL owners keep building them. Cities keep helping pay for them. And somehow, these stadiums become some of the most valuable assets in professional sports. So who's actually making money here? The answer isn't the fans buying tickets. It isn't even the football team. It's the stadium itself. Across the past 3 decades, American taxpayers have contributed more than $30 billion toward NFL stadium construction. In many cases, the billionaire owner doesn't pay for most of the building, yet still walks away with the naming rights, the parking revenue, the premium seating income, and control over one of the most profitable entertainment venues in the country. Today, we're pulling apart the economics behind owning an NFL stadium. Who really pays for it? How these buildings become money-printing machines long after the ribbon cutting, and why a stadium that barely makes money on paper can still create billions of dollars in wealth. A modern NFL stadium isn't really designed for football. Football is just the anchor tenant. Take SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. It costs roughly $5 billion to build, making it the most expensive stadium ever constructed. Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas wasn't much cheaper, coming in at nearly $2 billion. Now think about that for a second. An NFL team only plays 8 or 9 regular season home games each year, maybe a preseason game or two. If you're lucky, a couple of playoff games. That's barely a dozen football events annually. So how could anyone justify spending billions on a building that's used so little? The answer is simple. They don't. Because these buildings were never designed to make money from football alone. They're designed to generate revenue almost every week of the year. Concerts, international soccer matches, college football, corporate conventions, award shows, esports tournaments, private events. What looks like a football stadium is actually a year-round entertainment business, with an NFL team serving as its biggest attraction. But before any of that revenue starts flowing, someone has to pay for construction. So who writes a $5 billion check? It turns out, almost nobody. Instead, the cost is usually divided between 3 different groups. The first is the public. Cities and states often issue municipal bonds that are repaid through hotel taxes, tourism taxes, sales taxes, or other public revenue sources. On paper, it sounds painless because visitors are supposedly covering the bill. In reality, taxpayers often end up carrying much of the financial burden for decades. The second source is the NFL itself. The league operates financing programs that provide owners with favorable loans, reducing the amount of private capital required to begin construction. Finally comes the owner's contribution. Despite ultimately controlling the stadium, this is often the smallest portion of the overall project. Think about how unusual that is. Imagine opening a restaurant where someone else paid for most of the building. Another group offered you discounted financing, and once construction finished, you kept almost every dollar the business generated. Most entrepreneurs would never get that opportunity. NFL owners often do. And that's what creates the stadium paradox. Once the financing is structured this way, the risks become uneven. If attendance falls, if the team struggles, if the local economy weakens, the city still has to make its bond payments. Those obligations don't disappear just because the team finishes last in the division. The owner's downside is softened, while much of the long-term financial risk stays with the public. Economists have a name for the pressure that creates these deals. Some call it stadium blackmail. The process is remarkably consistent. An aging stadium is declared outdated. Discussions begin about renovations. The owner hints that another city would happily build a newer facility. Suddenly, local politicians face an impossible choice. Spend hundreds of millions of public dollars, or become the mayor who lost the hometown team. For most politicians, that's not really a choice at all. What's interesting is that decades of research tell a very different story. Economists Roger Knoll and Andrew Zimbalist, among many others, have repeatedly found that new stadiums rarely produce the massive economic boom supporters promise. Many of the jobs created are temporary or seasonal. Much of the spending inside the stadium simply replaces money that residents would have spent somewhere else. And the tourism windfall usually falls well short of expectations. Yet cities continue approving these projects because economics isn't always what drives political decisions. Emotion does. Keeping an NFL franchise carries prestige. It creates civic identity. And no elected official wants to be remembered as the person who watched the moving trucks leave town. So if the public is absorbing so much of the risk, where does the owner's profit actually come from? Most people assume it's ticket sales. It isn't. Then maybe concessions. Still not. The real money starts long before fans even enter the stadium. The first major revenue stream is naming rights. Companies pay enormous sums just to put their name on the building. SoFi reportedly agreed to a naming rights deal worth around $30 million per year. And because these agreements are negotiated locally, owners often keep that revenue instead of sharing it across the league. Next come luxury suites. These aren't just expensive seats, they're corporate assets. Businesses lease them for years at a time, often paying several $100,000 every season for the ability to entertain clients. A few hundred premium seats can generate more revenue than thousands of standard tickets. Then comes the biggest shift of all: non-NFL events. The lights don't go dark after football season ends. Modern stadiums are booked throughout the year with concerts, international sporting events, festivals, conventions, and private functions. The goal isn't to fill the stadium 10 times, it's to fill it more than 100 days every year. Every additional event spreads construction costs across another source of income. Finally, there are sponsorships, exclusive beverage contracts, advertising throughout the venue, technology partnerships, hospitality agreements. Every square foot inside the building becomes something that can generate revenue. By the time you add all of these together, the stadium starts looking far less like a sports venue and far more like a diversified entertainment company wrapped around a football franchise. But here's where everything comes together. The real prize isn't the annual profit, it's the franchise itself. Since the mid-1990s, NFL franchise values have outperformed many traditional investments. Teams have appreciated faster than gold, faster than many stock market indexes. And in some cases, they've multiplied in value dozens of times over. The Dallas Cowboys are perhaps the best example. Purchased for $140 million in 1989, the franchise is now worth well over $10 billion. A modern stadium plays a huge role in that transformation. It gives owners complete control over local revenue streams, instead of relying almost entirely on league television money. The moment a new stadium opens, investors don't just see a football team. They see premium real estate, guaranteed event revenue, corporate contracts, luxury hospitality, long-term sponsorships, and a business capable of generating cash almost every week of the year. That's why owners pursue these projects so aggressively. The stadium doesn't necessarily have to produce spectacular profits by itself. It only needs to make the franchise dramatically more valuable. And historically, it almost always does. So maybe the biggest misconception isn't that NFL stadiums are expensive. It's believing they're built for football. Football is simply the anchor tenant. The real business is entertainment, real estate, corporate partnerships, media, and asset appreciation. Once you see that, stadium negotiations start making a lot more sense. Because every debate about public funding is really a debate about who takes the risk and who captures the reward. And more often than not, the people carrying the biggest financial burden aren't the billionaire owners. They're the taxpayers sitting in the stands. If this changed the way you think about stadium deals, share this video with someone who believes stadiums are all about football, and subscribe. See you in the next one.